Testing, 1, 2, testing. Hey, what are you doing? Get over, we're about to start filming. Hey, I'm Autumn Schrock.
And I'm Nate Luebbe.
And we're professional travel, astro, landscape, wildlife, all the nature things photographers, and members of the Sony Alpha Imaging Collective.
And we are here in the beautiful Grand Teton National Park. We're here to do all those things. We're going to try to find some landscapes and some astro and some wildlife. But the first step is planning your shot. You can't just walk out to your car and go for it. You kind of need to know what you're getting into. So let's talk a little bit about how you plan ahead to maximize your success in the outdoors. So heavy.
I know. All the camera gear?
Yeah.
All right. When I'm starting out planning for a trip, I usually ask myself 3 questions. How long is the trip? What will I be photographing? And what is the climate and elevation, weather, where I'll be going? And these 3 questions not only answer how I pack, but also what I pack.
I like to start with 3 questions as well, but I start with what, where, and when, because for me that kind of helps inform all of my gear choices as well. For the most part, the what answers the other questions. If I'm shooting grizzlies in Alaska, I'm going to pack a little bit differently than if I'm trying to shoot the full moon over the Grand Teton. So the what really helps a lot, and the what helps me narrow down the where.
The next step is deciding, I guess, where to go, what I'm interested in photographing, and then from there I can decide, what's the climate like, what clothing do I need to pack, what's the elevation, what is the scenery going to look like, and that also will affect what camera gear I bring. And we're in Grand Teton National Park. It's incredible. It has literally everything. We've got astro, we've got landscapes, we've got moon lineups, we've got wildlife. Literally everything that a photographer could want is here in this beautiful, gorgeous national park.
Yeah, this park answered all of our questions for the what. It had every single category we wanted to photograph. That was the where. That's the answer to our first question. The only other question I had was when, and the summer's beautiful here. It's a little bit busier, but there's summer wildflowers, the animals, the bears, the moose, the elk are all up and moving around. There's not a ton of snow on the ground, the weather's pretty gentle, so it was a little bit easier packing for this than say a winter trip, of course, but for me, those 3 questions really help inform how I wanted to pack, and same for you. We feel pretty prepared. I haven't frozen to death yet.
And not only is all of that super important, but it's really key to pay attention to the elevation that you're going to be at, because it is summer, but in the mornings and the evenings, it's really cold. I was in a down coat. I really kind of wish that I had my down leggings because it was really chilly. And so that's something to consider. You think it's summer, I'm just going to need maybe a t-shirt and shorts, but it's definitely important to be prepared for mountain weather if you're going to be in the mountains.
Absolutely. And pay attention to if you're going to be changing elevation during the day. For example, I grew up photographing in Rocky Mountain National Park, and you can be at 6,000 feet and it'll be pretty warm. They have a road, Trail Ridge Road, that goes over 11,000 feet. So it can go from shorts and t-shirt weather to literally snowing even in July. So pay attention to where you're going, and it's better to be over-prepared with the correct clothing to stay safe than to try and look tough and leave your gear at home.
But before we even leave our house, we have a lot of preparations that we need to make. We are looking at, are we going in the peak season? It's probably going to be very busy, and I think probably the number 2 or 3 busiest national park in the US. So looking at lodging options, or we luckily have a camper van, so maybe you're into camping options, but those campgrounds fill up pretty quickly. So preparing for where you're going to stay, and then also into more photography side, looking at inspirational photos, looking at maybe like Google Images or Google Earth, asking fellow photographer friends, Instagram, all trails, looking at sort of compositions that you might want to get so you have a bucket list before you even arrive at your destination. And touching on one more weather thing, we also use a really helpful website called mountain-forecast.com, which gives you really detailed information for more remote locations where maybe AccuWeather or Wonderground or more typical weather apps don't have information for. And this can be really helpful if you're going to be doing more hiking, maybe some backcountry, while you're in a place like Grand Teton National Park.
We'll take it a step further and we'll use an app we love called Windy, which gives you just an incredible amount of information about cloud movement, where the wind's going to go, expected precipitation. They even go so far as to tell you if there's going to be forest fire smoke or pollution that could affect your shot. Sometimes forest fire smoke makes for really beautiful hazy shots. Sometimes it can completely skunk you. So we like to check all of that out. And then once we know what the weather's going to be like, we feel like we're covered on gear, clothing gear, then we're going to start looking at our actual compositions that we want, what our subject's going to be, and we start packing our bags with camera gear. You want to see what we packed? Let's go check out the bag. That's probably the easiest way to do it.
Let's do it.
All right.
Hey, welcome to my adventure crib. I'm super excited to show you what's in my bag. So of course, let's start with camera gear. I have, for my body, Sony Alpha 1. It's my baby. I love this camera so much that I bought 2 of them. I use it for astro and for wildlife. It's got the amazing frames per second. I think it's 30 frames per second, which is just mind-blowing. The lens that I have attached to this body is my Sony 14mm f1.8 G Master lens, and it is so sharp. It's the lens that I use for most of my astro photos. It's incredibly sharp all around the edges. There are very few aberrations, which make it an incredible astro lens. And then next we've got the Sony 20mm f1.8 G lens, and I honestly don't know why this lens isn't a G Master. It's so sharp that it basically feels like a G Master, but it's very compact and small, which is awesome for travel, and it's incredibly lightweight. Next is my Sony 100 to 400mm f4.5 to 5.6 G Master lens. This is the lens that never leaves my bag. I use it for a lot of my landscape photography, which is surprising to some because it's not your average landscape lens, but I use it for my moon photography as well, and anytime I really want to sort of punch in and get more intimate with the landscape. Next, we've got my Sony a7R V body. This body is incredible. I use it for landscapes. It's got that amazing new screen that you can tilt up and down and out to the side. And the 61 megapixels really allow me to zoom in later if I need to. Attached to this body, I have my Sony 24 to 70mm f2.8 G Master Mark II lens, and that's probably my go-to lens for most things. It's such a versatile focal length, and I think if you could only have one lens in your bag, it would be a 24 to 70. So super in love with all of my gear, and it's treated me very well over the years. Now, what I keep all my camera gear in is my Shimoda Action X30 women's bag. This is a women's specific bag, which is incredible. It's built for a more petite body, so it allows me to carry more gear more comfortably, which I think is really important for landscape and nature photographers in general. So really love this bag. And my tripod, I use Colorado Tripod Company. This is the Centennial 2 series. It's carbon fiber and it packs down pretty small and it's really lightweight, but it's also got the stability that I want for shooting astro, things where I'm maybe using longer shutter speeds. I don't want my tripod to move at all. This has a lot of stability, which is really awesome. Filters, I use Breakthrough Photography filters. I usually carry a polarizer, a circular polarizer, a neutral density filter, and a polarized neutral density filter. I really love the 6-stop polarized neutral density filter. It allows me to cut through the water and polarize my longer exposures, which is awesome. And then I think it's worth noting that a lot of our lenses have different filter threads on them, but you really only need to buy one filter size. So I buy the largest filter that will fit my lenses, and then from there I buy these cool little step-up rings that allow me to use all of my filters across all of my lenses. Now, of course, everyone is different, everyone has a different process, but this is what works well for me, and I encourage you to find what works best for you. You know, accessories can be an overlooked portion of photography, but these do allow me to do my job better and easier.
The babies just look like potatoes with legs. They look like a russet potato learned to walk. All right, so we just heard what Autumn uses for photographing astro and the moon and landscapes, but I do mostly landscapes and a little bit of wildlife, and that has some different gear requirements, and so I'd like to talk a little bit about those. I have two camera bodies with me pretty much at all times, and I've made some pretty intentional choices with which ones. My primary go-to body is the A1, and I just absolutely love this body. There is nothing it can't do. It can film 8K, it can film 4K 120, 50 megapixels, super fast burst. It's amazing in low light. It checks every single box for me. But I always have a backup camera because I love to do time lapses as well, which kind of dictates that you're gonna have a camera on a tripod occupied for about 2 hours, and if something cool happens near me, I want a second camera to be able to capture that. And so that's where the A7R5 comes in. And I love this camera. It's a little bit more resolution than the A1, which is sort of nice. Gives me a little more crop capability, a little more versatility, with the trade-off of maybe slightly slower burst speed, etc. On those cameras, I almost always have either the 16 to 35 f2.8 G Master or the 24 to 70 f2.8 G Master, and this is the Mark II of that 24 to 70. And I love that combination. It keeps me covered all across the board. I have the 16 to 35 on my A1 and then the 24 to 70 on the A7R5, and that's so that extra resolution can sort of help give me a little extra reach out of the 24 to 70, and it just extends my range and hopefully helps me avoid needing to make unnecessary lens changes in the field. Oftentimes it's windy, there's some dust blowing around, there could be some rain or snow. I am pretty cool, and so I've gotten a snowflake directly on my sensor before, so I try to avoid that kind of a scenario. Beyond that, I have the 70 to 200 f2.8 G Master. This is the Mark II version of that as well. Sometimes I will trade this out actually for the 100 to 400 as well, depending on where I'm going and what I'm expecting to shoot. But here in the Tetons, I have the 70 to 200 as my intermediate zoom, because my big boy here, the 400 millimeter f2.8 G Master, that is my super telephoto for pretty much all things wildlife. That is definitely my go-to lens if I'm trying to take a close-up portrait style shot of an animal. And I really like having two lenses and two bodies, especially for wildlife. I'll have the A7R5 on the 400 millimeter f2.8, and then I'll put the 70 to 200 on the A1, and I'll carry both of them so that if the animal wanders in a little bit extra close, I have the option to switch to a slightly less telephoto lens, get a wider shot of the landscape the animal's in, or just, avoid shooting, a close-up portrait of just an eyeball or something. The film crew also brought, as kind of a surprise for us, the brand new A6700. I've only used it a little bit so far, but I've been really enjoying it. It's got great resolution, pretty fast burst, and it's sort of cool. It's sort of like having an A7R5 in a much smaller body that's shooting in APS-C mode. I actually just used it a little bit ago to try and take some photos of a bird, and it turned my 400 millimeter into a 560 millimeter f2.8, which is unbelievably fast lens. I mean, no manufacturer makes a 600 millimeter f2.8, so the ability to put this camera on that lens and get that kind of reach is pretty amazing. Part of the reason I don't have my 100 to 400 millimeter lens with me on this trip is because it's pretty convenient to be traveling with another photographer who shoots the same system. So Autumn brought her 100 to 400, and if I'm nice, she'll let me borrow it every now and then. Also, kind of an undersung hero for extending the range if an animal's a little too far away are these teleconverters. This is the 2x and this is the 1.4x. And I really like carrying these. They do reduce the light into your lens a little bit, and you might find a little bit less sharpness depending on the conditions you're shooting in, but to double the focal length of a lens and it's only this big and weighs barely anything is such a convenient thing to have in your bag. They're not very expensive, they don't weigh very much, and so for me it's sort of a no-brainer to have that in there, especially if you're out shooting something potentially dangerous like grizzlies or polar bears where getting close is a huge mistake. A teleconverter can be the make it or break it piece of equipment in your bag. Obviously not walking through the wilderness just holding a bunch of cameras and lenses in my arms, so a good camera backpack is an indispensable piece of equipment. I own about 15 of them and I like about 3 of them, but my go-to that I actually love is the Shimoda Action X. This is the 50 liter, also have a 30 liter. They are bomb-proof, they're beautifully designed, they're super great for organization, and they hold everything I need. I mean, I've done everything from climb a mountain and ski back down to take an airplane to a different continent with this thing, and it's perfect in every scenario. To hold the cameras and lenses once they're out of the backpack, you need a good sturdy tripod. You will hear me talk so much about how important a good tripod is because you don't want to drop $10,000 of electronics on the ground. So I have 2 here. I have the Colorado Tripod Company Vector. This is their big, sturdy, ultra tripod with the Aspen ball head. And then this is the Colorado Tripod Company Centennial with the standard ball head on it over here. A little bit smaller, that's the Series 2 tripod, and this one's Series 4. So different tripods for different scenarios depending on how much load you're putting on them, but these are both my go-to. They've covered hundreds of miles of ground with me and they're still going strong, so I trust them with my gear and my life. And then the last piece of equipment that I really appreciate in my bag is this little multi-tool. It just has some Allen keys, it has a little flathead, it's got some Phillips head screwdrivers, some star screwdrivers. It's made by Red and it's designed to literally adjust camera gear, and it's so nice. If you ever had a base plate go loose in the wilderness and you're trying to find a flat rock that'll fit in there to try and tighten it, it's the most frustrating thing in the world. So I just keep this in my backpack at all times and it makes my life a lot easier. I am unfortunately an incorrigible gearhead and I'm always looking for fun new toys to add to my bag to help make my life easier. So if you have any recommendations, please let me know in the comments below. I would genuinely love to read them and I will continue to not have a life savings.
Now that you've seen what's in both of our bags and what we like to do to prepare and plan for a trip, in the next few episodes, we're going to be taking you around Grand Teton National Park. I'm going to be walking you through some astrophotography and some moon photography.
I'm going to be taking you out to find wildlife. This park has bison, elk, moose, bears. We're going to go find all of them. But the next episode, we are going to be waking up way too early in the morning to go shoot landscape photography at sunrise at some of the most iconic locations around this incredible national park. Stay tuned. We'll see you next week.